Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to disaster recovery, business continuity, risk, resilience, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Today, I'd like to welcome back for his second appearance, Mark Harris. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I mentioned in my opening, if you want to be a guest on the show, reach out. Well, you did reach out because you recently wrote an article that was published on LinkedIn entitled Geopolitical Risk and Evacuation of Staff and Dependents. So congratulations on the article. I've read it here and highlights all over the place for things that caught my attention. But my first question for you is, what is geopolitical risk?
So geopolitical risk then is the influence of geopolitical factors. Now, these could well be election outcomes in the world or across the world. It may well be military actions or trade agreements or the impact of those on market behavior or the security situation in where a company has its operations. So if we think about that, then you've got election outcomes. There are elections happening around the world. So we've got elections coming up this month in Turkey. So what is the implication there for those operating in Turkey and what might happen there on the elections? With instability and military actions, obviously Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine has created a lot of issues around the world from that point of view. And indeed, trade agreements. We've got trade agreements here in the United Kingdom or problems with trade agreements following Brexit. So all of these can impact on a company's operations or indeed any organization's operations. So if we look at the not-for-profit, if we are operating in a country where there are going to be elections and there is the potential for violence around those elections, what should we be doing about the protection of our staff? So I think that hopefully has answered the question on that, Alex.
Protection of staff. So obviously that means, hopefully, people are key and are a major piece of this. So why isn't it something that many organizations don't seem to do? Because we are seeing that in the headlines now, where organizations seem to be scrambling.
I think companies are scrambling because quite often they are caught out or they are caught unaware of something happening. And for me, when it comes to looking at potential for evacuation of staff and dependents, prior to investing in operations in a new geographical location, you really do need to go in there with your eyes wide open. And if I may play a little bit with your great title for your series of interviews, Preparing for the Unexpected, what has history told us about where we're going? So actually what we're doing, or what we should be doing as an organization, is preparing for the expected. Because if we prepare for the expected, we're in a really good place for preparing for the unexpected, because not everything is going to be exactly the same as has happened previously. So in case in point now, and everybody probably will have seen on the television news, etc., the problems in Sudan. There have been problems with conflict in Sudan for many, many, many years. So as an organization going in there, you need to look back at what has happened, what is happening at the moment, get advice from risk consultants on how things are going to play out, so that then you can start looking at how you want to secure your people should things go awry. It doesn't always have to be an evacuation, but we also need to, as I said, prepare for the worst case scenario. And if we've got to get out of Dodge, let's get out of Dodge before we have people having to rely on government evacuation missions. So we don't have scenes of people scrambling across aprons on airfields to jump in the back of a C-130 to be taken out, and those disappointed left behind who haven't been able to make it to the airhead. So we start to thin people down when we start to see various triggers happen. So there is starting to be demonstrations. Those demonstrations are being put down violently. Is it directly impacting on where we are or what we do? No, it isn't, but could it spill over? Right. Do we need everybody in place at the time? Do we still need families here with us? If we don't need families with us here at the moment, and if it's in their interest, let's get them out on a commercial carrier whilst those commercial carriers still have insurance to fly into that airspace. As I said, what we want to try and avoid is people scrambling across the tarmac to jump on the back of a C-130.
Why then aren't some organizations and communities and governments planning for this type of thing? Because in organizations, we see major, just the announcement of a major snowstorm where I am, in an hour west of Toronto. Right away, we start getting emails from our leadership or our HR group or somebody saying, hey, weather's going to be bad, stay home, or the Weather Channel tells us stay off the roads, let the plows do their work. We get those kind of things, but then Sudan or Afghanistan and other places occur, and that same sort of thing doesn't seem to happen. Is it because geopolitical risk is too fanciful? It's just, no, that's just too fathomable. I can't wrap my head around it, so it doesn't get thought about.
I think that's a very valid point with regards to geopolitical risk, and it is. I've seen articles on LinkedIn and other media platforms where that question is being asked. And I think the problem is, or not the problem, but I think the challenge is that VUCA, so vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, was born out of the US Defense College, I think, after the Berlin Wall had come down, because they wanted to say, so prior to the Berlin Wall coming down, we had very sort of, essentially you had two sides. You had the East and the West, basically. And that was the balance, and everything went on around that. So people knew where things were going. Yes, there were proxy wars fought by those two superpowers through, Angola and elsewhere, etc. But, essentially it was very manageable. But then you had the wall coming down, you had Glasnost perestroika, and then the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics then sort of collapsed in on itself. And there is a great deal of uncertainty at the moment. And that has been further, I think, compounded by COVID, which I think was the first real global pandemic, which really sort of kicked in a major way. And then you've got cost of living crisis following that, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a very bumpy road. And I think people really do. I think VUCA obviously came out of the military into the boardrooms. And I think VUCA now actually is at the personal level for all employees. Actually, what am I going to do for my kids' dinner tonight? So from that point of view, there is a lot of uncertainty around at the moment. And I think it is the fact now that organizations are having to do some serious catch up because of VUCA. And it is a lot more difficult. And I don't believe they are doing it regularly enough. I don't believe, or not everybody, but it's a generalization. But I think it needs to be more practiced. And I think they need to be more regular on their reviews of their operations against what is happening from a geopolitical point of view. Because in the end, it'll come down to reputations. And, if you don't get your people out, then your reputation is going to suffer, your share price will suffer, your operations will suffer. And you won't be able to get the people you want to work for you, working for you.
Can it be a little bit of perceived as, I send my organization, I'm doing business in Sudan as an example, because that's in the headlights now, so I will use that company as the example. If I start planning for geopolitical risks, is there a perception that, I'm here just to take your money and I don't trust you, that's why I'm planning for things to go wrong here on a geopolitical level? Can that be perceived as, kind of negative, as part of reputation within Sudan?
I think that's again is another very valid and important point, and it is how you are seen when you do have to go through an evacuation, and what is the perception of the local nationals with regards to you, perhaps your expatriate staff leaving and handing the keys over and saying, look, right, guys, can you just try and keep this going as best you can, and we'll be back when things get better. And I saw this actually with regards to an escalation in problems between India and Pakistan, and a lot of companies were pulling their staff out of Pakistan. And in fact, one UK pharmaceutical company, the CEO or the country manager was taken out to talk through what was happening back in London in the head office. And then he said, right, I want to be booked on the flight going back out there again. And they said, well, look, Bill, family's here now, etc. He said, yeah, but these are my people. It's our operations. I need to be there. And he was welcomed back into, I think it was Islamabad airport or somewhere else like that. And he was almost a hero for actually coming back to sit it out with the staff there. So you need to make sure you've got your communication sorted out from that point of view. First of all, why are we here in the first place? We're here to do the following. We're here to, yes, produce or extract this from here. We will be paying our local taxes. We will be employing local people, and we're here for the long term. If things get a little bit bumpy, yes, we have a duty of care to all our staff, not just our expatriates, but all of our staff. And again, this is often neglected in people's evacuation plans. They forget about their local nationals. And certainly I've seen it in some locations whereby we've helped people develop evacuation plans. And I've turned around to them and said, look, listen, the main sort of problem that's going to happen here perhaps is communal strife between the following either religions or people's, etc., beliefs. If that is the case, you employ these people and they are going to be left alone in a sea of other people who don't like them. What are you doing to secure their safety? So have we got money for them to get home to their home villages, their hometowns, so that they are safe there with people of a similar belief or ethnicity whilst this goes through, and then you can bring them back in again?
Is that what you talk about in your article? What's the phrase? Management of expectations? Before,
it
during,
is the
and
management
after?
of expectation. Sorry, Alex, I spoke over you then. Sorry.
Well, so that's okay. The expression you use, management of expectations, before something occurs, when something occurs, and I would assume after as well.
Yeah. What you need to know is, okay, very basically, if I walk into my house and it's getting dark, when I hit the light switch, I want to know that the lights are going to come on. So if we have a number of service providers in our evacuation plan, we need to know that they're going to deliver. So I think in my article, I talk about the idea of, yeah, so if we have a board meeting and we say, right, things are perhaps looking, as we saw with the Arab Spring, so things are looking a little bit rough in Egypt at the moment, how we placed with regards to evacuation planning, etc. And the risk manager says, well, don't worry, we've got an insurance policy which is going to cover off costs if we need to do it. So we've ticked that box, and we had a plan written up for Egypt 5 years ago. Well, that's not enough. That is, as I said, I think in the article, is bordering on the criminal negligence. Right, well, let's get that plan out. Does that plan still stand up? Does it still reflect our operations on the ground? Does it still reflect the number of people that we have here, a provider of chartered aircraft? Are they still in business, and do they still have aircraft that they can get? So that we need to know that. Or that may well be that you have an agreement with an evacuation company who pride themselves on being able to get people out from the main international airport for that country, but we've got 75 people up country, 400 miles away, and they can't get there. So it's pointless having that agreement in place if that company can't help us, because we need further rotary or fixed wing aircraft to bring those people into the main international airport, so that they can then get on that flight, chartered flight, to get out of there. And it's managing the expectations of everybody that this is going to happen and this is how we're going to do it. Because one of the other things you'll find with organizations that employ a number of nationals is that, as with every individual, your threshold of risk will differ. And as that happens as well with nationalities. So it may well find that you've got 5 different nationalities made up of your expatriate staff, and then you've got your local staff. But then suddenly one embassy turns around and says, everybody of this nationality, get out of Dodge now. And then the other nations are saying, well, hold on, ABC corporation, they've gone. Why aren't we going? Why are you still leaving us here, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to balance that out as well. From that point of view. So it is not a simple thing. And you do have to invest the time and, to a degree, money in making sure that you have that plan in place so that you know that at 11 o'clock of a Friday night, as we've talked through before, I think it is, that, you know, Murphy's Law dictates these things kick off, that your country operations team knows what's happening, your head office team knows what's happening, and also importantly, the relatives of those people who are in Sudan or wherever it is, they know that their loved ones are going to be looked after, because what they are seeing is a feed from CNN or BBC or French television or something, which is focusing on where the violence is. And we had this actually in Egypt a number of years ago. And relatives in the United Kingdom were getting very, very perplexed and very concerned that nothing was happening with their relatives out there. And they had a team at corporate head office who were taking the call saying, yes, of course, but what you're seeing is Tahrir Square, and Tahrir Square is some 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 100 kilometers away from where our operations are. So our people are safe. You know, your loved ones are safe. Don't worry. And we are monitoring the situation. And that gives people confidence.
So with that, you know, because you could have people 30 kilometers away, right in the thick of things, or 100 kilometers away, how do you rehearse such a thing?
What it requires, first of all, is, as I said, to get the plan out. So the British government has plans for a number of countries, and they will regularly, and I know this from having been in the military and practiced operations out of Cyprus with regards to the Middle East. You know, they will look at them, dust them off, and, you know, and does this still stand up at the moment? So that's one way of keeping things dynamic. And then it is quite simple. When something like Sudan happens, it should, I hope, trigger a activity in the organization whereby your organization's champion of crisis management, be it a board member or someone else, says, right, can we just get the crisis management team together this Friday lunchtime, go out, get some sandwiches, get some crisps, or potato chips, get some sodas, etc. Let's sit down, and if we had something like this, okay, our operation may well be in the Lebanon, or it may well be in Jordan or something, but if we had something like this happen now, how do we stack up against it? And then that is how you do it. And then I always advocate a slightly more elaborate exercise. Let's now involve the country management in this, get their feedback. Does that still run? I mentioned a plan which was a template from an active shooter evacuation plan, which is completely useless for an oil exploration company. And when their head of security for the country turned around to the oil rig platform managers and said, right, well, we need you to be able to close down within 24 hours. And said, we can't. If we were to close this rig down in 24 hours, it would be, you know, essentially unsafe. We will need 72 hours to close it down correctly to make sure there is no damage to the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to get those timings coming back to you. So you then have your timeline of saying, if I say now we're going to evacuate, how soon can I actually have people jumping into 4x4s and driving off down the road? In this case, it's going to be 72 hours at least, because of closing down the rigs safely and securely, and both for the environment and elsewhere.
I want to circle back with something you mentioned earlier about people being key here and people's safety. What about post-event trauma care? Because if I was an employee in Khartoum or somewhere in Afghanistan or Egypt or any other country that's experienced this, and bombs are going off, people are being shot, whatever. I get sent home. Luckily, I'm safe, but I'm going to be having nightmares.
Yeah.
Is that part of that extended look as well that we have to consider?
Certainly it is. And again, it comes back to your duty of care. These people have been working in a country where things have gone wrong. From a security point of view, there is conflict. As you said, there are bombs going off. There are fighters flying low over our apartments. There's machine gun fire. There are bodies on the street, and we've had to drive past those bodies, and it is horrific. And it is incredibly important that when you do evacuate people from somewhere, that you have a reception team waiting for them. Because sometimes, okay, so if I'm Bill Smith, I'm now with my family somewhere far away. I'm renting my house because I want to make some money on it. So I don't actually have anywhere to come back to. So again, you as a team need to have some hotels on standby for 2 or 3 days. So if I'm bringing them back from, say, if we're in the Middle East, probably get them into Cyprus on a commercial airline, out from Cyprus to London Heathrow. So I've got 3 or 4 rooms, or however many rooms I need booked for a couple of nights in the Heathrow area, so I can bring people in. We can brief them on what is happening. We can make sure they've got financial support if required. And then we can go through with them. Right, what would you like to do? Well, let's say, okay, I can stay with my mother and father, and then we'll be fine, etc. Okay, fine. Here's the telephone number of the person in HR you need to be in contact with. And also, please do come and see the medical team and also the mental welfare team and talk to them about what your requirements might be. So you brief them up on things like that from that point of view.
Well, you've answered all the questions that I had for you based on your article. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. Are there any final thoughts that you have? Maybe something we didn't touch on that you'd like to convey with regards to geopolitical risk?
I think probably what we have done is we have covered the points, but I think one of the main takeaways, or one of the main things I always implore my clients, and that is, the first thing is do, as I said, I think I put in the article, either look in the mirror and ask of yourself, how would I like to be looked after in this situation? Or I think I said dinner time in the article, but I also call it sometimes the breakfast test. Can you then sit down with your family at breakfast on Saturday morning and look them in the eyes and say, I've done the right thing by our staff from that point of view? So treat your staff as you'd like to be treated yourself is number one. Number two is do rehearse, go through it, walk through, talk through, and then bring it up a little bit, bring it up a level. And it is useful. I know there will always be a cost, but it is useful to bring in consultants who have experienced these things, because they may well be bringing to you a new insight on something, either to that country where you're operating or that industry that you're in, which is useful to your plan and to help your plan develop and stay dynamic. And thirdly, do always review the service level agreements you've got in place with those providers of services to assist your plan, to make sure that your expectations of what they're going to do is managed completely, and you're not left high and dry, flicking on the light switch and the lights don't come on.
Yeah, that never happens. Mark, thank you so much. This was a great chat, and I really hope some people that have families in other countries, that may not be on a hierarchical level, but now actually, I think you've given them some of the questions they can ask their employers, or the employers of their family members, to get clarity on things. And I think that our talk here has actually helped with that as well, not just those that are in the affected area, but family members as well. So I really appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise on this.
No worries, all right. My thanks for the opportunity, and always great to talk to you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks again, Mark, and everybody watching and listening. Stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. but leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.